So dollar for pound, Lodge is the best cast iron cookware on the market. Or is it? Today we're going to be playing with the Victoria cast iron skillet from Colombia. Hi, I'm Jed. This is Cook Culture. So I've been selling Lodge cast iron for years and years and years. I heavily promote this cookware as the best valued cookware on the market. If you're looking for a tremendous high quality piece of cast iron that will get you doing everything that you want to do for a fraction of the price of a premium piece of cast iron, Lodge is that brand. Made in Tennessee, it is durable, it lasts for generations, it performs incredibly well, and it is kind of synonymous with cast iron cookware in North America. If you talk about cowboy cookware, this is what people think about. They think about Lodge cast iron. But does that mean that it's the best valued cast iron on the market? Just lately, I was reading a neat article about a brand out of Colombia called Victoria. They now have what is called their signature series of cast iron, and I was very interested in what they're doing there. But outside of that, that's a different story. Their classic line caught my eye because I found this on Amazon for 22 bucks US. You know, I think in certain places you can sometimes find a 10-inch Lodge skillet for as little as $19 US dollars. But, you know, within $22, that's, you know, a coffee difference. So I was really interested. Made in Colombia, been made since 1939. They're a highly technical company, just northwest of Bogota is where this is made, in the capital of Colombia. And they've been doing this for a long time. They started as a small scale toy maker and then moved into kitchen gear and then started making cast iron skillets. And they produce a very large volume of cast iron skillets and sell in many different regions around the world. So I was interested, before I get into, like I was saying, their signature series that is competing with Field and Finex and Smithy and those, I thought I would start at the bottom and look at, like, okay, do they know what they're doing at a base level? When I first got this skillet, I was impressed with its fit and finish. I haven't taken the packaging off, but I wanted to show you what it looked like on the shelf. But so far, I really enjoy it from just what they're doing from a design standpoint. So if we're comparing this versus Lodge, the Victoria has a longer handle and a larger, not that it really matters, but a handle helper at the other end. I will do the specific measurements for you. It's got a larger pour spout. It's kind of everything more than a Lodge. When it comes to the interior, so far, without taking the packaging off, the interior is very similar. It's got a textured, what Stephen Muscarella from Field likes to call a candy coating shell. I've always found that quite humorous. And it just feels like that, coating, like a harder anodized type coating, even though it is a seasoning on a textured surface that just hasn't been polished. So it's very similar to a Lodge, but a little bit of a longer handle. It seems to have a little bit nicer of a finishing from the factory. There aren't any sharp edges that I could really find. It's quite nicely smoothed all around. So I like it. When I first got it, I was like, that's definitely worth $22 US with a bit of shipping here to Canada and then exchange. So maybe I'm into it for $40 altogether, Canadian, and this guy here on the shelf in Canada is around 45, 50 bucks. So, we're at the same kind of price range. So what I thought I would do is take two brand new skillets, and I'm gonna do some basic cooking. With using butter, I'm going to fry an egg, then I'm going to saute some onions, then I'm going to make a quick scrambled egg, then I'm going to, after that, reduce some chickpeas to do something really fibrous without a lot of moisture and just see what kind of texture is left on the pan and how does that affect the seasoning. Something just to make a note right off the bat, this guy here is finished with, they do it with a flaxseed oil. So that's the finishing, is a non-GMO European flaxseed oil. Flaxseed oil arguably has too high of a smoke point and is too drying. And so what that means is that it can actually become brittle. Technically, they may have found a type of flaxseed oil that works incredibly well for them. Only longevity will really be able to tell me that. I think out of the gate here, we're going to be totally fine. But, after a year or two or three, that could create a problem. So that's the only thing that I think, like, hey, that's a bit of a red flag for flaxseed oil from my perspective. But they must know what they're doing. They're making, you know, tens of thousands of skillets a year. So I'll leave that with them, and time will tell. But what we're going to do is get into these guys on some cooking. I'm going to talk a little bit about the technical aspects with the length and difference there as we go. But we're going to see how these two perform. So we've got the South American pan versus the American pan. So let's get into this. Okay, so these two pans, the difference here is that the Victoria is 10 inches in its diameter and the Lodge is 10.25 inches. But the overall length from handle helper to the tip is 16 inches for the Lodge and 17.5 inches for the Victoria. So it's got more leverage, so you can get a better handle on it, I'd say, by a little bit. We'll try that in cooking. You know, with these pans, really, once the handles are hot, you're moving them around a little bit, but you're not picking them up that much. It's really once they're cold that it makes the biggest difference, and they shouldn't really be that full at that time. You know, unless you have a handle helper with it, so it's like a handle cover to keep it cool. Okay, so here we go. We're gonna get some butter in these guys. Butter all around. Got a decently warm pan. I would say we're on a medium high, so just above medium. Let those guys fry away and see how we go there. So, got the Lodge on the left and the Victoria on the right here. And so far, no real difference here in how they're cooking. Everything's looking pretty exact, which, you know, I'm expecting. You know, I can't see how we're going to have a lot of difference here, but as we progress, what I'm interested in. Haven't seared it quite yet. So these are fresh pans. You know, one seasoning from the factory. So we've got some. There you go. Little bits and pieces, which, you know, for fresh pan, that is not really a big deal whatsoever. Yeah, so, you know, they both look to be cooking exactly the same, which is, you know, to be expected. It's going to be interesting to see how it progresses when we go in. We're going to fry some onions next and make a scramble. And then we're going to clean the pans, of course. And then we're going to do something more kind of harsh with it, and that's cooking down some chickpeas, which is kind of dry cooking. Seasonings and surfaces don't love that as much. They love fatty things. You know, we've got quite a bit of fat going on here, and that's what pans love to be cooked in. All right, so there's one. Okay. So we've got those guys. So I'd say identical. These two pans did exactly the same job. So there we go. On to next test. Okay, so a little bit of grapeseed oil. We've got the old butter that's still in there. And we've got half an onion in the Lodge. Half an onion in the Victoria. Okay, so these guys are nice and cooked. We've got 2 eggs going into both sides. Okay, so good and immediate. Okay, so that's rough surface. Both of them, comparatively to a smithy or to a field, that's a rough surface. There's no doubt about it. So we're going to get that guy off. All right, so there's one. And we're moving into this guy. All right, so that handle, interestingly, so I'm trying to get my hand on this handle, that handle is noticeably smaller. This is much more awkward. I didn't even think about it with the Victoria. That little stubby handle is tight. It's really tight. I found that Victoria handle, it's hot, but I've actually found that really comfortable. Really, I didn't even think about it. It was comfortable, just normal. So, okay, scrambled eggs, both looking identical, right? So exactly the same thing. The pans are gonna clean up beautifully. I'm just gonna get both of those into some water. There's gonna be no issue with that. I'll actually pause here. I'll clean them and I'll show you that really quickly. But those guys are done and perfect. So now I'm gonna clean these guys up and bring them right back here. Okay, easy breezy cleanup, super easy, and they both cleaned up exactly the same. Victoria has a little bit of marking in the middle where the Lodge doesn't, but overall they're good. So we're gonna heat them up now and we're going to do the chickpeas. Okay, so we've got these guys preheating. I'm gonna put in half chickpeas here, half chickpeas there. So why chickpeas? Chickpeas I'm cooking with no fat. I want to they're cooked. These are being pressure cooked. These are canned chickpeas. So what I want to do is dry them and toast them a little bit. And using no fat or 0 fat on these pans is pretty harsh to the seasoning. So this is a relatively new seasoning from the factory, both of these. So it could be a little bit harsh to do. But that's what I want to do. I'm stressing the seasoning, and cooking chickpeas is one of the easiest ways I know to stress a seasoning and see what kind of damage that could be created and how it's going to stand up. So let's just see how these guys cook down. All we're doing is just cooking them down, reducing some moisture in them, and browning them a little bit. Let's see what happens here. Okay, so those are just starting to brown. Those guys are, both pans are cooking just as equally, which is nice. I'm going to turn those guys off. Now definitely I'm liking that handle on the Victoria. It is, from picking that up, that's just normally comfortable. Where a Lodge is always uncomfortable. So those guys are done. I'm going to clean these up and we're going to take a close look at the surfaces here. Okay, so there we are, successful in everything that we did. These pans, as a general overview, are very, very similar. There's a little bit of carbonization from the chickpeas just inside the pan. I'm going to do a close-up for you, so while you're looking at this, you're going to be seeing the close-up. So there's a bit of carbonization, which is to be expected, unless you have a really high kind of quality seasoning that can take a little bit off as you scour, the carbonization starts to build up on something that's quite dry. That's really kind of nuanced in the way in which it works. But when you do dry cooking like that, if it's like say you overcook a pancake or some sort of a floury something, or something like that with a root vegetable or something that gets quite carbonated if it burns, it leaves carbon buildup, and that is not a positive thing, but a little bit of it's not the end of the world. You just want to make sure that you scour that down, and sometimes you get a little bit of staining, and that's going to happen. So that's happened in both the pans. The Victoria a little bit more than the Field, but not by too much, and it's wonderfully smooth. So they have cleaned up well, and the seasoning, the factory seasoning has stood up really, really well. So these pans have performed exactly the same as one another. They really are almost interchangeable pans. I'd say from using it, the only thing that I've really enjoyed, as I've mentioned, as I've used it, is that handle. The handle on the Victoria is fantastic, and if the pans are created equal, that's a deciding factor for me, and I really like that. You know, I'm a huge Lodge fan because of the value to dollar, but you know, if Victoria was something that I had the opportunity to sell, I probably would, because that is a very comfortable handle. I really enjoy that. And like I said, they now have a new signature pan that I'm gonna get my hands on at some point in time, so we'll see that one coming down the pipeline. But you know, overall, I would give the Victoria an equal mark to Lodge. So I think for dollar per pound, there isn't a lot that would beat one of these pans. If you're looking for a good introductory pan, just an absolute basic pan for camping or basic cooking, you know, either one of these ones is awesome, with a tiny advantage going to the handle on that Victoria that I really enjoy. So I hope that makes sense. Any questions, any comments, please throw it below. Thanks so much.